Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to learn how to design, dimension, assemble, and animate two parts using Fusion 360. So this tutorial is basically a brief overview on how to design something, and then how to dimension a part, and then how to assemble two parts, and then how to create an exploded view with an associated parts list. So quickly going through our assignment here, we're first going to design this part or object seen here using inches. And then we're going to create a dimension sheet, size A, to dimension the part using a multi-view drawing. And then we're going to design this part or object seen here, once again in inches. And once again, we're going to dimension it using a sheet size A to create a multi-view drawing of the part. Okay, and then we're going to assemble these two parts because they kind of interlock and fit together nicely. And then we're going to animate these two parts and pull them apart to show how they come together. And then finally, we are going to create an exploded view of these two parts along with a parts list table here. Okay, so whenever you're ready, go ahead and open up Fusion 360. So let's come on over to Fusion 360, and the first thing you want to do is start a new project. I'm going to call this Activity 4.1H. Hit Enter. And then I'm going to go ahead and click on this, double click on this project here. And I'm going to go ahead now, since I have a tab open, I can go ahead now and start creating my first part. So I'm going to come on over here, create a sketch. We're going to start on the XY plane. All right, and I'm going to go ahead now and close my data panel just to make the part a little bit larger for you guys to see. So let's go ahead now and start drawing out our first 2D sketch. Come up to your line tool, click on it. Starting at our origin, we're going to come on up a distance of 2.5 inches or so. We're going to come across. I'm going to just kind of draw out a rough sketch and we'll dimension it later. So roughly 1 inch or so. I'm going to come down about 1.5 inches, across about 2.5 inches, and then down about 1 and back to our origin. Now I'm going to go to my dimension tool, make sure that guy's 2.5. Let's make this 1. We're going to make this distance here 1.5. And this distance here 2.5. And this distance here 1. And we don't need it because now our sketch is fully constrained. Okay. Now we can go ahead and finish our sketch. Let's go ahead now and extrude it out a distance of, we're going to type in 2.5 and go ahead and hit OK. I'm going to set this view now as my home. Now let's come on up and start a sketch here on this face. Go ahead and click on it. I'm going to grab my 2-point rectangle. I'm going to start on this line here, right around in this area, and I'm just going to draw out a rectangle, something like that. And now we're going to dimension it to the appropriate dimensions. So let's come on over here and click on your sketch dimension tool. And from each side, we want that to be a distance of 1. Same thing on this side. And then we want it to be this distance to be 1.5. Enter. Okay, now let's go ahead and finish our sketch. We're going to extrude it. We're not going to add, we're going to go the other way, a minus 1. Make sure it says cut, hit OK. Now let's create this last feature here on this face. So let's start a sketch here on this face. And once again, we're going to grab out our 2-point rectangle, find the top line here, and right in this area, I'm going to click and draw out a rectangle and click again. And I'm going to grab my sketch dimension tool. And from this side, we want it to be 0.5. And same thing on this side, 0.5. And then this distance also 0.5. All right, and we're done. Let's finish our sketch. We're going to extrude that guy the other way, a distance of -1. Hit OK. Now let's go ahead and assign a material for this object or part. We're going to come on over to Modify and go to Physical Material. And I'll let you decide. You decide on a material you would like to use. Okay. I'm just going to go ahead and uh, pick some wood here. Let's just use cherry. Okay. Now let's say you want this to be wood, but you also want to add a color to this. To do this, you come on up to Modify again and do Appearance. Okay. And what you need to do now is come on over here to Paint. All right, so click on Paint, and just you can do something glossy, metallic-y, whatever you want. I'm just going to do a glossy sort of red for this part. Okay. So it's got a material and we painted it red, essentially. All right, go ahead and close. And when you're done, just go ahead now and we're going to save this as part 1 in our activity 4.1H location and hit save. All right, so now let's go ahead and make a dimensioned drawing file of our object or part seen here. So to do that, let's just go ahead and show our data panel here. And under design here, because we're in design mode, we're going to now come down and we're going to basically do what's called a drawing, and we're going to do a drawing from design and from this design. So go ahead and click on that. And we want a sheet size we want to select 11 inches by 8.5 inches and then hit OK. And now it's like asking you, right when it opens up, it's asking you, hey, this is our front view. Where do you want it? And this is our scale, 1/2 essentially. Well, I'm going to change this to make it a little bit bigger. I'm going to make it 0.6 to 1. So it's a little bit bigger. Notice how it's got a little bit bigger now. Okay, because I want to use up all of my space. So I'm going to click here and hit, oh, also a couple options. If you want to leave it color like you see here, click right here, click shaded. Let's just go ahead and do that. Let's hit OK. Okay, but let's say you don't want to make it shaded. So we're going to edit this view and then click on it again, and we can just do a basic outline of it. Okay, let's keep our scale the same and go ahead now and hit close. Now let's bring in our top view. So right up here under base view, I'm going to click here and I'm going to change this to top view. Okay, I'm going to click. I'm going to change my scale again to 0.6 to 1. So it's a little bit bigger than 0.5 to 1 or half. Okay, and I'm going to change this to visible edges. Like I said, you can make it color if you want and just click on that shaded button right there. Go ahead now and hit OK. I'm going to bring in my side view now. I'm going to come over here. My right side view would be right here. I'm going to change the scale again, 0.6 to 1. And let's make those visible edges outlines. And I'm just going to click right over here and then hit OK. And then finally, let's bring in our 3D view. Remember, every multi-view drawing should have a front, top, or side view and a 3D view. Okay, so let's do a base view. And in this case, we're just going to come on down here and we're going to check out. Let's use the northeast isometric. That looks good. And I'm actually going to leave this one color, okay, shaded. And let's keep this, let's be consistent with the size, 0.6 to 1. And I'm going to click where I want it and then hit OK. And actually, you know what? Let's move it down. So you come on over here. If you want to move it, you click move. Okay. And then you click right here and you just kind of move it and then hit OK. Remember, these drawing files are extremely important. This is what the company will send off to the manufacturer so they have the necessary information in order to make the part. Okay, so let's go ahead now and start adding dimensions. Come on up here, click on dimension button, and on my front view, I'm just gonna click on this side, I'm gonna click on this side, and I'm gonna drag my mouse up and click again. Okay, I'm gonna add one more, I'm gonna click here, I'm gonna click down here, drag my mouse up and over, and then click where I want it. All right, and now on this view over here, I'm actually gonna move it. So I'm gonna go to move, and I'm gonna kind of just move it a little bit up and out of the way. That's probably good. Okay, and now I'm going to go ahead and start adding dimensions again. So let's see here. Dimension. Let's get this distance to this distance. This distance to this distance. This distance to this distance. And I'm sorry, I made a mistake. So if you do make a mistake, click on the dimension, hit delete. It's that simple. Come back to your dimension tool. I meant to do this distance. All right, now let's come on over to our side view and start dimensioning it. I'm actually once again gonna hit escape so I get out of dimension mode, and now I'm gonna right click, move, and I'm gonna select on it, and I'm just gonna kind of move it down right around in here. I think that'll do the trick. Hit OK, come back to dimension. I'm gonna click here and here, click, and now let's do here to here, the overall height here. And then we're gonna do this little distance right here. And then this distance. And we'll move the other parts. We'll move some stuff around here in a second to make it look better. Okay, so I have everything dimensioned now. I'm going to hit escape to take it out of dimension mode. And now I'm going to sort of just click on these guys to move them down to make room. I'm basically just going through and tidying up stuff. Okay. I don't like this one up here, so I'm going to bring that one down in here. I'm going to move this 1.5 in a little bit. Okay, and with that said, I'm going to go ahead now and move this guy a little bit out of the way. Okay, so everything looks nice, symmetrical, and aligned here. Okay, and when you're done with your dimension drawing file, we need to save it. Let's go ahead and select save. And part one drawing looks good. It's in our activity 4.1H. Hit save, and it should show up over here. And that's it for part one. Now let's go ahead and start part two. So to do that, come on up here. You can also just start a new design. I'm going to just click here, new design. For our second part, let's go ahead now and create a sketch on our XY plane. I'm going to X out of my data panel. I'm going to grab my 2-point rectangle tool, and I am going to draw out a square. I'm going to type in, while that's highlighted blue, 1.5, tab, button, 2.5, and then hit enter. Okay, and that's it for the sketch. We're going to go ahead now and finish the sketch, and we're going to extrude it out a distance of 2.5. I'm going to go ahead now and set my current view as home. All right, now let's go ahead and create a sketch on this front face right here. And we're going to once again grab our rectangle tool and just draw out a rectangle about yay big here. We're going to make it, I'm going to type in 0.5, tab 1.5, hit enter. And then I'm going to make it, I'm going to dimension it from this edge a distance of 0.5. Okay, let's go ahead now and finish our sketch. We're going to extrude it out a distance of 1 inch. So click on the part or the face you want to extrude. Just make that 1. Hit OK. Okay, and now we got to make this top feature. So we're going to start a sketch right up here on the top. Okay, once again, I'm going to grab my 2-point rectangle tool, and I'm just going to kind of drag out a rectangle. That is, I'm going to type in 1.5, tab button, 0.5, enter. And now I'm going to dimension it from this side a distance of 1. That's it for the sketch. Let's go ahead and finish it. And we're going to extrude it upwards a distance of 1 inch. So now let's go ahead and give our part, now that we're done, a physical material. And I'm going to be consistent. You guys can choose whatever material you want. I'm going to be consistent, and I'm going to use cherry wood here. All right, I'm going to go ahead and hit close, and I'm also going to give it a color, a different color from the other one, and I'm going to paint it again. But I'm not going to paint it red. I'm going to paint this one blue, so they're different. Go ahead and hit close. And now that I'm done, you always want to save. So go ahead now and save it. We'll call this part 2 and save. Now that we're done with our part, let's go ahead and create now a drawing file for it from design. And let's be consistent. And for this class, we're always going to choose a sheet size A, 11 inches by 8.5. Go ahead and hit OK. Okay, and it's going to automatically bring in a view. I'm going to select this as my right side view. Okay, because our front view really should, and I'm going to just go ahead and stick with a half 1:2 scale here for now. I'm going to select visible edges and hit OK. Because remember, your front view should be the view that always has the most features and the longest dimensions, and I don't think this one applies. So I'm going to come on over here now. Let's change the right side view, and I'm going to use this now as my front view, and I'm just going to kind of click right here, hit visible edges, okay, and my top view. And let's give those visible edges, okay. And then finally, our northeast isometric view. And you can give it some color if you want, or make it with just visible edges. Up to you. I'm going to click right here, hit OK. Now we just need to go ahead and start adding dimensions to it. Let's come on up to our dimension button here, and we're going to click here and click here, click here and click here, and then click here and click here. All right, now let's do our top view. I'm going to click here and click here, click here, and then click here. And then we're going to click here and click here. All right, and we'll go back through later and sort of clean things up. And then we're going to click here and click here for this dimension. Okay, I'm good now. I've done all my dimensions. I want to hit escape to get me out of dimension mode. And now I'm going to kind of move some things around. So I'm going to try to move these a little closer. I'm just going to move this guy up a little bit. So move. Okay. And so when you're done, you should have something that's hopefully looks similar to this. Everything's dimensioned properly and everything looks nice and symmetrical and even. All right. And when you're done, make sure you save it. And it's going to call it part 2 drawing. Looks good. Let's go ahead and save it. Now that I am done with the drawing file here, now let's come back up and we're going to do a new design. And where it says design, okay, we're now going to start assembling our 2 parts. But first we need to do something that's very important. We need to save this and we're going to call it assembly and hit save. And now we're going to select our 2 parts here, part 1 and 2, and we are going to place them into our new design here. So we're going to right click here, insert into current design. And I'm just going to kind of move it down here a little bit, hit OK. I'm going to do the same thing here for part 2, right click, insert into current design. Just going to move it out of the way a little bit, hit OK. The first thing we want to do now is ground one of our parts. So I'm going to choose this part. I'm going to right click on part 1 and we are going to ground it. Okay, this will not allow it to move. Okay, now I'm going to right click on part 2 and I'm going to select copy. Now here's some things I want you to understand is when we go to move it, these little arrows pop up. And it's always a good idea to sort of move it in a manner so that you can kind of see how it orientates itself. So if you look right here, okay, it kind of goes in just like that, okay? So it's always a good idea to kind of, when you bring it apart, to move it in a manner so that you can see how they fit together, okay? So I'm gonna just do that, leave it where it is right there, and I'm gonna hit okay. So this part right here sort of goes in here, and this part down here, this little notch sticking out, fits in here. So let's go ahead now and assemble the two. So what you want to do is you want to come on up here to assemble, and we are going to select joint, okay? And we're just going to, if this shows up, just go ahead and hit capture position, okay? And what we're going to do now is when you scroll over your face, you'll see these different points pop up on the corners, the midpoints. So here's a middle point, another middle point. You got to choose the points and match the points up here with the points on the second part when you're doing an assembly. So I know that this point right here will correspond and match up with this part right here. And there it is. Our assembly is done. So go ahead now and hit OK, and we're good to go. All right, I'm going to choose this view sort of right here now as set current view as home. All right, and now let's save it. And we are done with our assembly. Once your assembly is done, you can now create an animation to show how the two parts come together. So let's come on over here to animation. All right, and I'm gonna zoom out here, and then I'm gonna basically, with my mouse wheel, I'm gonna come on up here, I'm gonna select transform components, and I'm gonna click on the part here that I wanna move. And I'm gonna use these arrows to move it up a distance of -4 inches, okay? Hit OK. Let's do the same thing for this part. Click on transform components, click on this part, I'm gonna move it down a distance of -4, hit OK. Now I'm gonna click on the part, hold down Control and click on the second part, and I'm gonna right click, show hide trail lines, and this will sort of show a line in terms of how they come together. Now let's go ahead and hit play and watch our animation. Okay, and so you can basically see how our parts follow these lines as they come apart. All right, and fool around with it. You can also do some other options. We can go backwards. You can make your videos longer. Okay, so when you're finished, just be sure to save your animation. And something very important, it's extremely important to realize that all of these files are linked. So when you go and you change part 1, it's going to affect this file. Okay, so be cautious when you go back and change things, because you have to remember that all of these files are linked together. All right, so the last thing we want to do now is to create an exploded view. So what we're going to do now is we're going to come on up here where it says animation. We're going to do a drawing now from animation. And like we did last time, we're going to do an 11" by 8.5" by inch sheet size A. And then this automatically pops up. And I'm going to basically just sort of put this right here. I'm going to keep my scale of 1/2. You can change it if you want to make it smaller or bigger. I'm going to select visible edges and hit OK. Let's delete the title block here for this exploded view. And now I'm going to bring in my actual assembly too. So I'm going to click over here on base view. And I don't like this view, so I'm going to change it to northeast isometric. So I'm going to kind of click there. I'm going to use my visible edges here. If you want to make these color, that's entirely up to you. I'm going to click here, hit OK. All right, looking pretty good. So the last thing we want to do now is to create a table parts list. So we're going to come on up here where it says tables, and we're going to just select, well, table. And we're just going to select that guy right there. And then I'm going to just drag it up into that top right corner. You'll notice our cherry wood material shows up. Our part numbers or names that we saved them as, part 1 and 2 shows up. And we got some balloons that automatically showed up. So we're looking good. Be sure to save it when you're done. And we'll call it assembly drawing. I'm going to call it assembly drawing exploded view. Save. And that should do it for this video. I hope you learned something. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.